G'day guys, Agates here. Russell and the team at Access Workwear and Safety have been looking after me and other tradies for years, making sure we get the clothing, equipment and boots we need when we're on the tools. Now, in their typical style, they're taking customer service to the next level and talking to experts on our behalf about life beyond the tools. And let's face it, none of us are getting any younger, so tune in and get some tips from different experts on how to look after your health, wealth, business and your team beyond the tools.
Hi and welcome once again to Beyond the Tools, where we look at ways and strategies to transition off the tools well before retirement age. Really pleased today to welcome Matt Hutchinson. He's a graphic designer, and we're going to talk today a little bit about branding for your business and the importance of that. Matt, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, pleasure. Thank you for having me.
What are some of the initial tips that you would give to our customers or any business that's looking to market their brand?
Yeah, sure. So number one main thing is definitely the branding and identity of your business. So essentially the logo and the look that incorporates that. Now, number one thing to think about is simplicity and recognizability.
Okay, yeah.
So don't make something really complex and super detailed, because people aren't really going to remember that or take it in on a quick glance.
Yeah.
You want something that you could look at and say, yep, I remember that, whether it's a number or a letter or an icon, an element,
Yeah.
and that they'll remember that straight away, go home and say, yeah, I remember that brand.
Yeah.
It's really simple and easy and nice and clean.
So simple, consistent, and you look at the worldwide brands like the Apples and the Nikes and the McDonald's and these sorts of ones that do that and do it brilliantly, because they keep the message consistent and simple, as you say.
Definitely, yeah. So it's all about that instant, recognizable and simple. And as I said, if it's really complex, then you're just not really going to remember it. It's going to take you too long to look at it and take it in,
Yeah.
as opposed to, like you mentioned, Nike and Apple, for example. You look at it and go, oh yeah, that's a tick.
Yeah.
I'll remember that tick.
Yeah.
And then you walk around the streets, you walk into shops, and you then start recognize it, and you go, hang on, I remember that.
Yeah.
That's that icon, that's that logo. Whereas if it's some blushing, flourishing, environmental logo or some over detailed car or icon, you're then just going to walk around and you're not going to remember it, and you'll walk around in shops and magazines and you're just going to blank over it and gloss over it. So yeah, as simple and recognizable as you can.
Sure. I'd love in our business to be looking after Nike and Apple and McDonald's, but I probably need to be a little bit more realistic for our customers, for our trade-based customers. What are some of the simple things that they can perhaps do to develop their brand? And I guess specifically sort of talking about uniforms and how that.
Yeah. So I guess it all depends on what their business name is going to be and what they want their identity to look like. So if we're talking about trade wear and gear like that, think of brands like FXD, for example.
Yep.
So it's just FX and a D.
Yeah, they did it very well. Yeah.
And the main reason for the simplicity of it and the recognizability is think of whether it's going to be on a billboard or shrunk right down to your thumbnail. Yeah. And that's where things like FXD, brands like Nike, that they have that instant recognizability, because you can make it the size of a mountain and I'll go, yep, that's a tick.
Yeah.
And I'll make it the size of my fingernail and I'll go, yep, that's the size of a tick.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're, say, let's use my name for example, Matthew Hutchinson Construction. Yeah. I can put that on my chest, but you're then restricted to a maximum area or a minimum area, that you can do it where it's still going to be legible and recognizable.
Yep.
If I want it on the back of my shirt, not a problem, because you've got enough room there. But it has to be something that can be enormous and shrunk right down to, almost say 2 millimeters, just to throw that out there, that you can still read it and understand it and recognize what it is. So if it's over complex, you start losing detail, right? And that then comes from, say, you look at a lot of workwear, from all your polos
Yeah.
and jumpers and hoodies and jackets. If you're going to start embroidering, that's where that also comes into it
Sure.
as well. So, as I said, there's a lot of words going on here in this brand. You can't really go much smaller than that,
Yeah.
because when you do start applying it to garments, you then start losing the detail, because the machine isn't going to shrink with the size of the logo.
Yeah.
Threads and print and everything, they're set on a certain size, and they have a certain area where they can get to before they start losing detail.
Sure. Yeah.
Right? Yeah, so threads they're not going to get any finer than they already are.
Yes.
And if you're going to start trying pushing in more detail, you're just
Yeah.
going to get less threads, and it'll start breaking up your
Sure.
design, and you won't be able to recognize it or understand it.
It's interesting, as you know, we've just started doing our own in-house embroidery for some of the smaller orders for that quick turnaround for our customers. And we often get asked the question around embroidery versus print.
Yep.
And in a lot of ways that comes down to the logo itself, of course, but it also comes down to the fabric that you're
Correct.
putting, that you're decorating, as
Yep.
we say, or we're value adding.
Yes.
So tell us a bit about perhaps fabrication.
So technically you can embroider on any fabrication, but it all comes down to the quality of that fabric. So as I said before, this polo, for example, it feels quite fine, but it's a real tight,
Yeah.
dense fabrication, so the embroidery will take that. If the fabric starts feeling not cheap but a bit looser, it's going to start damaging the weave of that
Sure,
fabric. So
yes.
you will then start getting holes or loose threads from that embroidery. It's just not going to take and finish nicely.
Yeah.
So you've got to be careful when it comes to lighter weight garments such as t-shirts and polos, for example. And that's where you then say shift into screen printing, for example, where you can screen print on anything.
Yep.
Really. It'll take it no matter what. And that's where you can get a cleaner finish rather than embroidery. If you're going to embroider, then you're better off with your heavier fabrications.
Sure,
So,
yeah.
you know, sweaters, hoodies, work pants, work shirts, something where it's a denser, heavier fabric
Yeah.
that will hold that a lot tighter and neater. And again, if embroidery is not your option and you do have a more detailed or intense, colourful logo, then you can go to screen printing, where you can get that more finer detail
Yeah.
and those layering of colours that, say, embroidery won't really be able to achieve.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a technical area, and it's something that we're working closely with Matt and other suppliers around being able to provide our expert service, which is what we always try to do, to make sure that when our customers are approaching us and showing us their logo, we're able to then direct them in the right way,
Correct.
and that's what Access Workwear is all about. Matt, thank you for your time today.
Absolute pleasure,
It's really insightful, and it's such a big part of,
Yes.
of everybody's business
Yeah.
to promote their brand
Yeah.
and to represent their brand in the way that
Definitely,
they
yeah.
Want to.
Yeah.
And having your insights been
Yeah,
fantastic.
correct.
So I really
Beautiful.
appreciate that.
Great, hopefully that was insightful. And
Absolutely.
got
Thank
something
you.
out of it.
And thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time beyond the tools.